The road. This happened in Texas. December 27, 2007 is a date I will remember for the rest of my life, as of, if not one of the weirdest events to happen to me ever. So, I was at my friend's house. His name is Will. Much easier than me saying my friend all the time. Well, Will and I decided to go to the library to use the internet. We lived in a trailer park, well, more of a trailer home community. It was an actual neighborhood, with a water tower and everything, and the nearest library was about a 4 to 5 minute car ride, or a 20 to 30 minute walk, depending on how lazy you were. Anyways, we start walking at 7:40. I remember the time because Will had mentioned that they closed at 9. Walking there isn't a big problem. It just goes straight down the street in front of his neighborhood, then take a right turn, and then take a left turn onto a long road where the library is located on, which is about 2,000 feet in length. I'm using the measurements I saw in MapQuest. So, we walk on the left side of the road because the library is located on that side. We make it, and we stay until they close. It's 9 p.m. at this point, and we start walking back down the road we came, with the library being on the right of us because we are walking away from it. This road is a little long, so we're getting the chit-chat and whatnot, and we walk down the sidewalk, never leaving it. We walked for about 5 to 7 minutes down this road when we came to the end of the street, and we were back at the library, us being on the same sidewalk, never turning around or anything, and the library being on our left as if we had just arrived. We freaked out. We just kind of stood there in front of the library for about 5 minutes, trying to pull ourselves together. We were so scared, we called his mom to come pick us up. His mom arrived about 10 minutes after. She pulled up to see us in the same spot we were in when we stopped. We were too afraid to leave that very spot. We drove home. This trip took us about 4 minutes. So when we finally get to Will's mom's place, we're there for about 5 seconds before we leave to go to Will's grandparents' place, which is about a 5-minute walk to the other side of the trailer park. On our way over, we see in the sky this shooting star type object falling from the sky. It looked like an orb, and we did not know what it was. We arrive at Will's grandparents' place, relieved to be there due to the fact of how weird that day was at that point. Will told me something that terrified me till this very day. The time, it was 11:30. Strange creature. So, I am a bit hesitant to talk about this, mostly due to what I think it might be. But I really wanted input from other people that sort of knew what they're talking about. The local paranormal group is a joke at best. I was walking home the other night from a grocery store that's about a half-mile from my house. I live in a family graduate housing place on my campus, so there's usually a few brats running around in the parking lot or whatever, but not usually at 10:45 at nighttime. So I cross the street, take a shortcut under a pine, which gives me full view of the parking lot. Now, I'm super friggin' paranoid at nighttime. I've been and seen shit, basically. Okay, so I happen to glance up and I notice a figure moving on the far end of the parking lot. There's no one else around, and there's only one car, a silver truck, parked in that area. I'd also like to note that this was towards the darker end of the lot. The houses and lights were all along the sidewalk at the end I was walking on. This thing looked like it was 3 or 4 feet tall, so I thought it was a kid at first, and initially paid it no mind. But after a moment, I realized there were, number 1, no parents in sight. Number 2, it was pretty late for a kid to be outside, right? And number 3, this thing was buck-ass naked if it were a child. It was really cold at night, below freezing. And number 4, it wasn't moving like a human. Its legs were bent, and its shoulders were sort of hunched. It looked like it was a medium to dark brown color. I couldn't tell if it was covered in hair or just hairy in some places. It had sort of a snout but mostly human face, really grotesque, like someone who was missing facial muscles or had been burned horribly. Sort of reminded me of a slight less disgusting golem from Lord of the Rings kind of thing. So we seemed equally startled to see each other, and I ran around the other side of the silver truck and disappeared. But I could see the fence beyond the truck, so I know it didn't just run off into the next parking lot. I didn't really feel like taking my chances or harassing or startling it, so I cut a wide path around the truck and went home. My guess is that it was either under the truck or in the bed of it. I wasn't risking that shit. I wondered if maybe it was a Managishi or something of the sort. Some of the local tribes, which my mother is a member of, have similar legends, Narumbi, which are absolutely not to be messed with, so I thought it might be feasible. Does anyone here have any thoughts on it? It was pretty chilling, and I was really spooked when I got home. Another thing to note is I've been extremely tired and having nightmares every night since then. He's not real. My first chilling experience. At least than I can recall, it was my first time I realized that things aren't always as they seem, and what our parents tried to comfort us about the topic many a night, but was not all true. I was 17 years old, still in high school, but didn't have much longer left. I was still dating my first ex-girlfriend at the time, and it's something she nor I will ever forget. Of course, we no longer talk, but it would be way too hard for anyone to forget something so extreme. So, we were having a nice night at her aunt's house, about 12 miles away from my house. Her parents were close to my father, as they'd known each other for well over 15 years. So, we were all very close, and she was coming back with me to spend the night. It was a pretty great time overall. The ride back was great. Both in great moods, didn't drink, didn't do drugs. We both played high school sports. I remember everything was great, up until we got to the road my dad lives on, in small town USA. It was around 11 p.m. at night, and I remember as I approached the road, I hit my right turn signal, and I saw this kid walking in a red hoodie and blue shorts. I immediately tried to find rhyme or reason given the time and day, which was Saturday, and the kid looked no older than 11 or 12 years old. What was he doing walking at this time? Is he okay? Where's he going? Rabbit questions. It is a safe town and all, but what kid really roams the streets at 11 p.m.? I remember just before making the turn, every bit of joy and happiness I'd felt from the night events were completely drained and replaced with deep depression. Hugest mood swing ever. I made the turn, and that's when I realized this kid's trying to commit suicide at my expense, was the thought, as he turned when I did and walked right out in front of my truck. I hit the brakes and swerved to go around, but stopped right by him. Worst thing that could have happened besides turning someone's child into a speed bump. We both looked over at the passenger side window and saw his face. He hadn't stopped walking, but I was maybe a foot to the side of him. He was staring slightly upwards, and his eyes were completely white. It was almost like staring a real-life zombie in the face, since his face had this look of utter cluelessness, like if someone were brain-dead and drooling with their mouth hanging open. My ex panicked and screamed, "It's not real! Please go! It's not real!" And I slammed the gas, lost for words, but like an idiot, I hit the brakes moments after speeding off. A matter of maybe 30 yards, I looked in the rearview mirror. Nothing. No one. I reluctantly opened my door as to try and just make some sense of anything, hoping there would be a kid there walking. No one. I got back in. She was still freaking out. Then I drove to my dad's and lost my mind. I forced them to take us down the road and through the town to try and find anyone resembling the kid. The town was completely, absolutely empty. I don't even believe we slept that night. Kept the lights on, watching comedies, tried to forget. Because not only did we know what we saw, neither of us wanted to acknowledge the fact that he never stopped walking. And he would have had to walk right through the side or back of the vehicle, by the time we drove off in a hurry. It took a moment before we saw his expression and eyes, so when we swerved around him, we came to a complete stop for at least a few moments, and he was right at the window when we sped off. Note, the most perplexing part of all was that we both knew that when we initially saw him, there were no transparent qualities, completely in the flesh. Just not. He looked as real as any other real person we'd seen. And that was that. It crosses my mind from time to time, but I try not to dwell on it. Over the years, I've wondered, why us? Why me? Why did he want me or us to see him? Was there any real reason to it all? Etc. Also tried to find out if there were any bad accidents or deaths on the road, but turned up with nothing. She knew something that I didn't. I originally posted this in Glitch in the Matrix on Reddit, but somebody told me that I should post it here, so here it is. So, I'm not sure if this is where to post this, but it seems to fit. When I was 16 years old, me and my friend would go skateboarding all the time, pretty much every day. On school nights, I'd usually be back home around 9 or 10 o'clock, but on the weekends, we'd be out much later. Sometimes not even coming back till 3 a.m. We'd go for miles just riding and talking and having a great time. We'd always talk about going to the next town over. It was fairly close, and most of it was downhill. It took us a lot longer than we anticipated to get there, and by the time we finally got there, it was already pitch black out. There's a road that goes winding back to the road, and my friend didn't go to the school and didn't know the area at all. I did know the area, but didn't go to the school. I had a relative that lived around here. I suggested we take this windy road because it was really smooth and led to a nice spot to skate at. We started going down the road and noticed that it had a lot of roads that went off of it. We scrapped the original idea of going down the windy road and decided to take one of the roads coming off of it. I don't know where these roads lead. It's dark and I was never on them a lot, so the opportunity to explore was there. We settled for a road that goes down and then comes back up, just enough to get some nice speed going, but not enough to get up the other side without having to walk some. There was one problem, however. This road had absolutely no streetlights on it, and none of the houses on it had their lights on, so it was pitch black. It looked really creepy. We went down it thinking, it's just a road with no lights. I checked this time. I remember vividly the time. It was 11:53 p.m. I turned my flashlight on. That did basically nothing. We were both scared. We didn't feel right. We both felt like we were being watched. We just ignored it, and just tried to have fun skating and talking and chatting and joking around, right? Because we loved exploring, especially exploring at night. We skated down the little street. It was on a very slight slope, just enough to gain some speed and some momentum. At some point, I pulled ahead of my friend. I'm just enjoying the wind and looking around. I still felt like I was being watched. I looked down at the road. It's going straight and up ahead, and there's a road to my right, like a T intersection. Nobody's there. I get to the bottom of the hill, where the slope stops and hits a patch of gravel, throwing me off my board. I look up, and right at the intersection, I see a lady with hair to her shoulders, wearing almost what looks like a white wedding dress, crossed with a white nightgown. Standing beside her is a little girl and a dog. The little girl had a dress on. It was pink in color. She had longer hair than the adult. There was a pug. It was a pug, if I remember correctly. It was on a leash, but neither the little girl or the lady were holding it. It was just laying on the ground. The lady didn't say anything to me. She just grinned slightly. They didn't move whatsoever. The dog didn't. Nothing. I'm scared shitless, because not even 5 seconds ago, I had looked exactly at that same spot where they were standing right now, and nobody was there. I was watching that intersection like a hawk. Up until the moment I fell, I was making sure a car wasn't coming. I start getting up, the lady, girl, and the dog, all as still as a statue, not moving or showing any emotion whatsoever. My friend skates and stops right beside me and asks if I'm okay. I say yeah, and asked if he saw what just happened, referring to the people popping out of nowhere. He said yes. I look at the mom and asked why they're out so late. She doesn't say anything. I also want to mention, the little girl and the dog haven't even moved at all yet. The only one that is moving at all is the adult, and she's only moving her eyes and making slight facial movements. Me and my friend run up the road. After about a second of running, I look back and nobody is there. Me and my friend are freaking out. I call my mom and explain what just happened, and ask if she can come pick us up. Luckily, she was just coming back from her and her boyfriend, who were on the way back to my mom's house. We didn't all live together at the time, so they were willing to pick us up. They had questions about the whole incident. When we got inside the car, we drove back to where it happened. We didn't see anything at all. A few days later, I'm at a Walgreens with my mom. I see a dad and his daughter. The little girl looks almost exactly like the little girl I saw on that night. They're both picking out a card. The card said on the cover, "You will be missed." I ran back to the car shaking out of fear. It's something I'll never forget. I'm getting chills and a lump in my throat just thinking about it. Something wasn't normal. A few things I like to mention. The intersection, I could see quite far back it, while coming down the slope and going up the other end. I don't see how they could have disappeared from that spot when I had my back turned to them for 1 or 2 seconds tops. Even if they ran, I'd still be able to see them because of how far the road was in which I could see. This is really weird to me. I look like a little kid. I don't really grow facial hair, and I'm 5'4". I was probably 5'2" at the time. I'm a guy. I'm quite small because of my size, and look, most people turn their head when I fall or do something, because when a little kid falls, everyone looks and rushes to their aid. Well, it's not exactly that. When I fall, rarely. A few people usually ask if I'm okay or help me up, because I look like a little kid. See where I'm going with this? This lady didn't. She didn't ask if I was okay, help me up, or anything like that. She just stood there. Neither did the little girl or the dog do anything or make any reactions at all. I mean, it was a dog, for God's sakes. Which leads me to the last point. The dog. What dog sees someone fall and doesn't even flinch or do anything? It had a leash on it, but it was on the ground. Nobody was even holding it. It didn't bark, growl, or anything. Still as a statue. I don't know what happened that night, and I probably never will. But it's something that will stay with me for the rest of my life. Sorry if this isn't the type of content posted here. It seems to fit though. If I'm breaking any rules, let me know.